welcome to all of you from the National Farmers Union here to the South Building. How many of you is this your first visit to USDA? Well, particularly welcome to you. I'm a history buff, so let me tell you a couple of points that you need to know. Particularly the building across the street, but by extension, both of these, the site for USDA was selected by none other than Abraham Lincoln himself. So we are the only federal agency on the very historic mall. Now, we gave up proximity to the White House, which some say on certain days wouldn't be a bad thing. So we're the only one on the historic mall. And furthermore, Mr. Lincoln said this shall be known as the People's Department. Very reflective of how many of us were involved in farming and agrarian practices at the time. So to all of you, welcome to the People's Department. I still think that's very fitting and appropriate. I also want to, in addition to all of you involved in the National Farmers Union, I want to do a huge shout out to National FFA and all the state members that are here. Yes, I did spend a lot of time, about 3 months out of my life, recruiting the National FFA Center to Indianapolis. And a few years later, recruited the National Convention to Indy and made sure everybody understood who these people were and that they needed to treat that right. So it's right up there in terms of importance to Indianapolis, just like the very famed Indianapolis 500. So I hope they treat you right when you are in my hometown or near my hometown of Indianapolis. Folks, we have limited time. I think the best thing to help you is for me just to take a spin around the world and give you some sense of what I'm seeing and what I'm observing, because there's a lot of plates spinning up on those rods. Some might say aircraft circling to land, and boy, do we want to land one or two or more of them. So let me just start there. And I'll start with Korea, actually. If you ever wondered whether there is or is not a document that helps Secretary Perdue keep ag from getting involved in the Korea Free Trade Agreement, it actually exists. And it's the same chart that saved blowing up of NAFTA. And I'm very proud of Team Foreign Ag Service and my colleague Jason Hafmeister, because it is an evidence that you can provide data, you can provide truth, and it can make a difference. So let's start with Korea. The good news is that the Aggies in Korea and the Aggies here said, we think we're doing pretty well on trade. Do not include us in your free trade agreement. We're doing pretty well. And I think that kept one more plate off that rod and spinning. And I take pride in that. And so far, it's going pretty well. If you've seen the beef and pork exports to Korea, it would lighten your eyes and put a smile on your face. So let's celebrate that. Let me touch on Japan. We have what's called an agreement in principle. Basically, that means you've got most of the details, you could say 80, 70, 90, I don't know exactly where it is, but a lot of them. And I think it's going to be a very good thing for agriculture. To remind you, it is not, in our phraseology, a full-blown free trade agreement. In other words, it does not need to go to Congress for approval. All the things that were negotiated on the U.S. side are within the laws, within the boundaries of the law to just get done, and that means we get going much more quickly than if it were a full-blown FTA, and that is good for agriculture. I haven't seen the details, so I'm speculating. I don't think we got absolutely everything we want, but you never do in negotiations like that. But I think we got a great deal in the areas that were most important to us. Beef and pork, soy meal, DDGs, and all of those kinds of things. Plus a number of other things, ethanol, for example, and the like. So I think those are very important. And I believe the hope is that Prime Minister Abe from Japan and President Trump are to sign an agreement on the margins of this month's annual meeting in New York with the United Nations. It may or may not happen. I wouldn't be distraught if it doesn't, because I think the goal is still, and I don't know the date, but I think around January 1 or somewhere in there, we would go live on the agreement, and that way tariffs would come down in some margin equivalent to the other countries of the TPP, and that would be a good thing. So I've got a smile on my face with where I think we're going to end up with Japan, and I hope that you do as well. Now, I will have to tell you that on the Japanese side of things, it is more like a free trade agreement. They have to take it through their equivalent of Congress, the Diet. So we'll take a little longer time there, but I think we can get to an operable stage here fairly quickly, and for that I'm very, very pleased. Let me speak to USMCA. I just returned from Canada. I was there all of last week on what we call a big ag trade mission. They're anxious for us to get it passed, and then they will pass it. And I think you're aware that Mexico has. Now, I'm well aware of the position that you all took, and I respect that. I came to know the NFU partly growing up when I wore the blue and the gold jacket. Indiana had a farmers union. When I was in the great state of Minnesota, did I say that right? How many Minnesotans here? It's not Minnesota. Yeah, it's Minnesota. Lived in Mankato for one wonderful year. Didn't really want to move back home. I loved it so much, but they said, Dad, you can stay, but your check is going to Indianapolis. And that was before electronic funds transfer, which meant I needed to be there to get my check. Loved it. Fell in love with the Great White North, as we lovingly called it. So I got to meet many, many more of you up there, and I have such deep respect for where you are. But boy, I hope that between Ambassador Lighthizer, USTR, and all of Congress, both sides of the aisle, and by extension, all of you, I hope you can come to approving and supporting. And let me tell you why. I am very concerned that we'll see no agreements anywhere in the world if we don't pass USMCA. Politically, it gives another country the reason to say if they can't do something with their next door neighbors, they can't possibly do it with us in the far reaches of Asia, Pacific, or elsewhere. So do what you're doing well. Look hard at that. But oh my goodness, I hope we can get you all to support this and support it aggressively because we need it. It is a much improved deal over NAFTA. And I want to remind you, I haven't talked to very many of you, but I talked to a lot of people. And the siren cry was, do no harm. Ag is pleased with NAFTA. Do no harm. It's been improved upon. We have better, not extremely good, but we have better dairy access. More importantly, we built a fence, maybe a wall is the better prescriptor and better word these days, but a wall around the dairy industry of Canada so they couldn't go cheap like they were. And they were. And yes, I can say that I love my Canadian friends, but also say that I think what they were doing was inappropriate, at least with respect to neighboring countries like ours, Europe, New Zealand, and others. I think we've made a lot of progress in terms of free and more appropriate grading of grains. I think many of you know the wheat example. Wheat crossing into Canada became feed grade. Same wheat coming south of the border was food grade. Not quite very fair. Better poultry access. I'm well aware of the growing poultry industry up there. I believe Minnesota's still in the winter turkeys, if I'm right. So we need that access. And then I lovingly call from British Columbia, we've now achieved, should it pass, cage-free wines. You might remember that British Columbia, provinces up there have greater autonomy than states do here, and they passed a law that said incoming wines and spirits have to go into the dark room, no light of day, no marketing, no promotion, and so those were fixed. But the most important thing out of that are not these things that are much more real and close to you, like better access. It's the writing of the first time of a biotechnology chapter in a free trade agreement. The biosciences are critical. I hope to think that many of you have found benefit from biotechnology traits, the GMOs as we call them. Well, we've just scratched the surface. These new powerful technologies of gene editing, the CRISPR technology, if you're deep into it, I think bring enormous promise to not only humankind for human health, but also plant kind for plant purposes, and of course for animal. And the first up to bat to benefit from them is the plant sciences. So, this biosciences or biotech chapter is critical. And it's not as easy as a cut and paste, cut it and put it into the Japan agreement, cut it and put it into something with the Philippines, Thailand, Venezuela, whomever, Vietnam, but others. but it presents an opportunity. Even more important is the rewritten chapter on the sanitary, phytosanitary. The SPS, for those of you that may not know, is that soft underbelly around the world where other countries will just give us the shaft. Oh, we're concerned about those GMOs. We need 10 years to study it, and so in the interim, you can't bring those in. Give me a break. I was actively involved in that in the private sector in 1996 and 7 when Roundup Ready came over. Well, 10 years later, it would have been 2007. And where are we now? Yet another 12 years. So I understand that people need to make their choice, but please, let's don't use false science or false narratives of science as an excuse to deny fantastic quality products that you all produce from being exported around the world. We do not do that. We do not do that. I hope to think that we are still that great light on the hill that says if it's safe and it's proven it's safe, and oh, by the way, we're no easy pushover. Countries around the world have to really work hard to demonstrate they don't have pests. They don't have problems. They don't have disease with their cows, their plows, whatever it is. But boy, it's getting tough these days. It's getting tough to hold that line because others are not treating us fairly. So let me tell you, that's why I'm about 350,000 miles, that's air miles internationally, into my job, trying to defend your honor and our honor and defend good science around the world. So, USMCA, because of these two chapters and the greater access, is very, very important. And I hope you'll continue to think hard about that. Okay, let's talk China. China has changed and has been changing probably forever. And this began long before Mr. Trump was elected president. You all need, you owe it to yourself to get a book and understand who President Xi Jinping is. Now, I have little doubt he's a nice guy. I have little doubt that he and Mr. Trump have a decent relationship. I'm thrilled that Ambassador Terry Branstad from Iowa is a good friend of Xi Jinping. They came to know each other when Xi was a county communist organizer, and Terry Branstad was a very new and young governor. I'm thrilled that they have the close relationship they do. So I think you can have a good, close relationship. But let me just tell you what. Mr. Xi Jinping is a communist zealot. He sees himself very much in the spirit of Mao Zedong, far less than Xiaoping, who opened up China and brought the incredible openness and economic reforms that we've seen and we've realized benefits from with respect to China. So all that is to say, things have changed forever. Let me give you yet another example to really drill in on a human level. All of my foreign ag service teams, and we have presence in about 5 or 6 locations because China is so big. Many of you may not know their top 12 cities would all rival the size of Chicago. There's that many people there. So we know China pretty well. Our people are allowed to go to church. Those that are faith-based and want to go to church. Now you got to take your passport. Because occasionally the Communist Party and their enforcers would come around because Chinese nationals are not allowed to go to church. No. Off limits. But for our people, if you have a passport, you could go. It used to be those visits would be once, twice a year. It's now once, twice a month. The enforcement, the rise of the Communist Party. We are here for the party, maybe not for the human element or for growth or economic development. So I think the president, for better or worse, is trying to find that nexus of keeping the economic prowess, the growth that they've experienced, and at the same time see the rise and the restoration of a very, very strong Communist Party. Now trust me, I'm not mad about it. I'm not mad that they've stolen our technologies, our germplasm, and I've experienced it all. Let me just tell you, I know what's happened. A colleague of mine, I did not know him, he was a bench scientist at Dow Sciences, is still in jail in the state of Indiana. Caught red-handed shipping all the new pesticide formulations straight to Beijing. A feed company not 20 miles away from the headquarters of Dow Sciences pulled an employee right off the plane, one-way ticket. In his possession were all the new enzyme formulations that was their next generation of products. So do not disguise or hide from the fact that there is real theft, there is real forced technology transfer. And, as I've told my own twin brother, who manages our family farms in Tipton, Indiana, please don't be misled about the quest there. Let me give you an example competitively. I was talking with the Minister of Agriculture in Brazil. Now, you know Brazil is both a friend. They see the world as we do, bring on technology, but they're also a very staunch competitor. Very strong in soybeans, corn, DDGs, and so forth. The minister told me, he said, yes, the Chinese very pleasantly said, we'd be happy to help you provide you with the loans that will help you finish all those roads from the Mato Grosso, where all the soybeans and corn produced, all the way to the northern ports. Which that's essentially giving them something equivalent of our Mississippi River and its delta system. The cost of production and shipment goes down incredibly. So this is very serious stuff. Very serious stuff. So in that regard, I do believe firmly, though I just despise tariffs, generally speaking, it was time to say you can't steal our stuff anymore. And though my heart goes out to those that are soybean producers or sorghum producers or pork, and by extension I'll include our friends in Canada where pork and beef and canola has been shut out, we had no access to our beef. We had no access to our poultry. China was not fulfilling what they call a tariff rate quota. This is when they go public and say, we're going to buy X amount of rice, X amount of wheat. Markets move on that proclamation and then only fill half of it. So this kind of stuff has got to continue, and that is the battle that we're in to try to say, folks, we love you, we love to sell to you, but you've got to follow the rules of the WTO and be honest and truthful. And that's where we are. Now that said, I am encouraged. I am encouraged that last week, Vice Premier Liu Hu, who's been leading the Chinese delegation, said we're going to come to the U.S. We're going to pick up the negotiations. I don't know what those will look like. I hope we can get back to where we were. We were negotiating very well. They were getting things, we were getting things. We were fixing problems. We had not fixed all of them, trust me. But boy, we had begun fixing a lot. I hope we can pick up where we last left off. But I'm only 50-50 on that. So, I'm encouraged. Oh my gosh, they need us. More than you'll ever know, because there's no First Amendment there. And we certainly need them. I hope we can come together and find a way to work this out. But I'm going to watch and see. I was very lucky to participate in all 21 of the exchanges. 7 trips to Beijing, they made 7 here, and the rest were digital video conferences. And yes, there was very serious backsliding. That's not rhetoric from the White House. I was there on the conference call, and I witnessed it. So, we got a big enchilada here. We got to work it hard, but I continue to believe that the two will come together. I'm bullish, but I'm not Pollyannish about this. Let me shift to Europe. Europe's a tough nut to crack. It's a very tough nut to crack. In the wake of mad cow disease that came out of the UK, and with that came a loss in trust in government regulators and scientists, up their back rode Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth, the activist community, and since then, on anything scientific oriented, it's been a tough sell. It's been a very tough sell. This is what led to no GMOs or very, very slow approval of the import of crops that you produce from biotech. But the precautionary principle has a stranglehold in that region of the world, and it's not letting loose. And next up to bat, we're going to find out the fourth quarter, October, November, and December, we're going to find out what their review and revision of pesticide risk assessment will do. I know something about this. Let me describe this in layman's terms. When you evaluate the risk of a pesticide, you look at the toxicity over here. How kind or nasty is it? Then you look at the exposure. What's the exposure to birds and bees, kids, humans, air, water, etc.? And you blend those together. And then you add what could be hundreds, if not thousands of fold safety factors just to make sure you got your safety right on a maximum residue level. So if anybody detected something on a nut, a fruit, a corn, a soybeans, It's safe. Europe has taken exposure completely out of the picture. And what's left is science's ability to detect that pesticide. If they can detect it, more than likely it's rejected. Well, you and I both know that science can detect residues at parts per quadrillion. I'm all for less is better. Farmers like you are doing a fantastic job at that. But the result is basically none of that. France and Switzerland are sponsoring, with the Food and Ag Organization of the UN, a program called agroecology. It's subsistence farming. No fertilizer, no pesticides. There's not even, in many cases, global positioning, which doesn't even touch the product. Go back to subsistence farming, like grandpa, or great-grandpa, or great-great-grandfather and grandma used. It's serious stuff, folks, and we're already getting stuff rejected at the ports. So this is just the latest in this protectionist regime that is just very, very serious. Now, once again, I'll tell you, I'm not mad about it. I just want to fix, I just want to make it so that we can continue to do what we've done for decades, even millennia, and that is bring along technologies that help add to food and therefore can help address a growing population. You may or may not know, we've got to double our ag and food and protein production by 2050. Now, quickly, this may or may not be my issue, but it's going to be these members who wear the blue and the gold jacket up here. It's going to be our children, our grandchildren's issue. We have got to get this fixed, and we're working on a number of approaches to try to do that. But this is what's going on around the world as we find protectionism, and that's why a tougher than normal stance is appropriate, and I think in balance. So I'm a bit worried about Europe. I'm not arguing. I'm not advocating for tariffs, though they may come. I'm advocating for negotiation, work through the WTO, try to do that, even though it's a long, arduous, difficult task that can take years, and it takes some of our commodity organizations millions of dollars to fight those things. We're at crossroads of many, many sorts with China, with Europe, with this rejections of science, or at least sciences I grew up knowing and understanding to exist. And I think you, by extension, do as well. Let me give you some positive news. There is still a lot of business around the rest of the world. There really is. If I can use a baseball analogy and call China and Japan, certainly Canada and Mexico, others, as triple or home run markets, there's still a lot of singles and doubles that can be achieved out there. And I think those of you that know anything about baseball know that more games are won on singles and doubles than they are triples and home runs, even though the triples and home runs are fun and sexy and catch all the attention. Here's an example. I took a group to Guatemala. Now, most of you are following what's coming from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. That's where most of the people with the backpacks on their back are coming to our southern border wanting in. And would lead you to think that there is great strife and problems in those countries. And there are. But don't think for a moment that you can't trade them. I took an ag trade mission down there a year ago. And what we do is we take a larger group, this time it was about 40 or 50, and they sell stuff. They do speed dating. 45 minutes with somebody who might be interested in buying their product. And they do this for 2 or 3 days. Sometimes we go to different locations. Last week, we were in Toronto, and then we went to Montreal. 2 sets of potential customers. And at the end of all the speed dating, they conservatively estimate what do you think? What they think they'll be able to sell to these people they've met with over the next 12 months. And then we measure 3 months in, 6 months in, and 12 months in. The results were unbelievable. It was so high, I mean, it was through the stratosphere what these people projected they would sell to people and buyers from Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. It set the all-time high record in the history of the Foreign Ag Service. It was that high. So we went back to the top 2 who were just through the roof and said, would you reevaluate? We did say conservative estimates. Well, one revised it downward just because he felt a little ashamed. The other person, she kept it the same, but she said, no, I've already got orders on a bunch of this stuff. We then evaluated 12 months later, which would have been about June. It did even better. To this day, Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala hold the record on an ag trade mission set of sales, and it holds the record in the history of the Foreign Ag Service. Now, we're not going to get that everywhere, but it tells me that if we spend the time and investment, and that's what we're doing through our ag trade promotion monies, these are the mitigation monies that came my way and our team's way through the mitigation program. There's business to be had out there. The stories are coming in from all kinds of groups, from pork and beef, dairy. The ethanol industry just sent some in Friday. They're finding those new markets. Now, we knew those people, but we just didn't have the funds to go do it. And just so you know, our entire market access program, those are the funds that we've had every year to go help partner with your commodity groups, $200 million a year. Europe supports French wines at more than $200 million a year. That gives you a sense of relativity. So we do use those monies very well, as do our partners who have to put skin in the game as well. So I share that with you, not as the be-all, the end-all, the only example, but to say that's why I'm on the road so much. And more of my travel has been to countries that we know but really haven't spent as much time with than it is these big triple and home run markets. And I'm telling you, the cause is just, we are fixing things. And sometimes they can do it just because they know it's right, and sometimes it takes pressure. We did the right thing in pulling from India the generalized system of preference dollars, the GSP dollars, up $5 billion of tax credits. They weren't behaving. They kept doing tariffs on your pulses, pieces, lentils, wheat. So the cause is just, and that's what we're trying to address. So what do? I'm taking your comments, and trust me, I do. I find a way to get your voice into the White House, to USDA, sometimes to the Department of Commerce, State Department. Let me tell you the lengths I'll go. I will not name the country, but they were testing me, and when I said trade's a two-way street, they were testing. They wanted to know, was I being real? Because there's this perception that the U.S. ag market is so prolific, and it is so good, it is so big, it is, that we're just going to swallow up anything that said country, pick a country, might want to produce. And it's not that case at all. So I said, trade's a two-way street. And they said, well, we'd love to get some F-16 fighter jets. Can you help me there? I said, well, that's not my business, but give me a week. I came back and I did call my colleague, Undersecretary at the Pentagon, that does buying and selling of armaments. I said, here's who I'd like for you to call. And she did. Now, I don't know if it materialized or not, but I'm telling you, those are the lengths I go to help lift up you and your products and go sell something around the world, particularly in all these troubling times. I think the future is still bright. I look through a tunnel and I think the light at the end is not an oncoming train, but I think it's the bright day of sunshine. I do see change coming, although much more slowly than any of us would like. And I'll just remind you, whether it's through Roger or the team he's got around him, I hope we hear from you, because we do take those into consideration, and we do vector those in to people who need to and want to listen to that. And even if they don't want to, we still send it in because they need to know what the heck is going on. I'll stop right now and see if there's any questions, Roger. I'm happy to do that. I don't know our time, but as long as my colleagues are in the back of the room, I will happy to take your questions. Yes, sir.
Can I come? Keep them short.
Let me know where you're from, too.
Gladly. Gary Ward is president of the Minnesota Farmers Union, and I really appreciate your comments on our great state of Minnesota. In reference to, we had an Indiana FFA student tell us the other day he spent a week in one of our Farmers Union camps this summer. And he said all Minnesotans are born nice, and we like to think they're not only born nice, they stay nice. So, it's greatly appreciate your comments. And I personally want to thank you for doing your work as you're doing it within the agency. You've been put under trying circumstances, is a way to put it lightly.
Understatement.
And you didn't address China, which we appreciate that. And that's the thing. We think that the president made a huge mistake trying to take China on all by himself. We just think it's going to be hard to solve. We're all building a coalition of countries around the world. We all agree on why we need to take it on, but we think the president made a mistake on doing that by himself. We had a nice contingent of young people within the room here, a lot of FFAers, a lot of young farmers, and the longer this hangs on, the less of them people will be out there able to farm, and that's our biggest concern.
Sure, let me address that. My response is speculative. I do not know, I have not talked to the president as to why he did that, but let me give you some background that might help you on why this might still have been the best way. The WTO is broken. And thank goodness that we're not just going to toss it out. I was worried about that when I was newly confirmed in 2017. I think we are trying to reform it. So it's broken, and in many cases, I don't think is fair. So I think the president had a choice. Go to the WTO with this many, many, many countries and these many, many, many problems and take years and then take millions of dollars. It takes money to get the best lawyers to put the best WTO case together. And my guess, and I do not know this, trust me, I hope there's media here, don't quote me on this because I don't know this, but it would take years and millions of dollars. He could have gone through 2 terms and not had any change. It takes that long. So my sense is that the shorter time period is a quicker acting thing, even though it's causing pain. And that's why I'm also grateful that the mitigation program has come along to at least offset that. But I do not know that. I'm speculating that, and I think it would have taken years and years and millions of dollars to do that.
Down here, we have to keep the question really short because we're into our break about 10 minutes already.
Thank you for the presentation today. My name is Rick Adamski. I'm from Wisconsin. And my question to you is if you see a difference between agribusiness and agriculture, because this organization of National Farmers Union is about family farm agriculture. And although agribusiness, agriculture has had different economic outcomes, especially regarding trade, because trade is such a low margin of profit. It's the lowest margin of any transaction that we do. This administration seems to put a great deal of emphasis on solving only the trade issue, not getting to fundamental oversupply issues that this country has, this government, over years and years and years, and many other administrations have exacerbated the problem of oversupply, and it's not going to be traded away.
Sure. Fully understand, and if you wonder whether I hear it straight from a farmer, my twin brother is very good about being very direct with me. Well, I come from industry, so I better be telling you what my background is. Dow AgriSciences and Landco were, seed, biotech traits, and then Landco, animal vet products. And I see agriculture as a long chain that takes all of those. But don't for a moment think that I forget where it begins and who the price takers are versus the price makers are. I understand that. That's why I'm so encouraged that when the president called Secretary Perdue, I think the next day the secretary would have been calling him, they said, create a mitigation program that helps our farmers. Oh, we'd love to do something for industry, but if it helps the farmer, there will be some benefits found down the chain. So I think there has been a pretty keen focus on the farmer. Now, I bring up trade because so much of what you produce or our farm produces has to go to trade. If we try to do the folks just domestically, we're in very deep trouble. So that's why I wake up every day trying to move stuff out of the borders of the U.S. because you are so prolific at what you do in producing food, fuel, or whatever it is that you all choose to produce. And so I hope there's been a very strong dedication to the farmer and the rancher, but the way we're trying to help you most is to get those trade opportunities, those trade export opportunities opened up significantly because they've been very closed for too long.
Dennis.
Dennis Rosine from Wisconsin, and I've attended.
This will have to be the last question because Ken's got to leave and we have to move on.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
I've been attending DC functions since 1978. I was here last year. And at that meeting, a number of Farmers Union members questioned and were concerned about what's happening to the structure of agriculture in our rural communities. because our structure has been our strength as a country, family farm agriculture. I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in hope. I'm usually considered a gentleman at home, but my family farm and family farms around me can't listen to projections, can't talk about your hope. There's a reality out there, and the reality is we're going broke. We don't need presidential tweets that create trade wars. I'm sorry, but we don't. And we don't need a Secretary of Agriculture making comments and jokes about farmers in basements being land sellers. This is real.
Yeah, baby. Rock on, baby.
Well, let me just say thank you for your candor. I hope I'm living your wishes. I mean, I've got 125,000 miles, that's air miles, ahead of me between now and the end of the year trying to open up markets for you. And we are getting there. We are working hard on that. It may not seem like it now, but I think we got to get there. My hope when it comes to things, I'll just use China as an example. If we kept on the path we were on, we were destined to have more and more and more of our markets closed. Once again, though we were selling a lot of soy, a lot of sorghum, pork, some others, we were shut out of the wheat market, shut out of the rice market, shut out of beef, shut out of chicken. And so my view is you've got to call the line somewhere. And so though we are in pain, and I understand that, we're trying our best to open up those markets so that what you produce can go probably up the Pacific Northwest and go out so that you can have a better future in the next few years. But don't take my comments as something as dismissive. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. Just so you know, once a week, either on the way to work or on the way to homework, I'm calling farmers around the U.S. And Roger, I'd love to get 2 or 3 of yours to make sure I'm listening to the NFU point of view if I'm not. To hear what the farmer is saying. So I hope I'm not caught in a bubble of DC and that we're truly listening to what you're saying. But thank you for your comments and your candor. I think my successor or my colleague is here for the next visit and I've got to go. So Roger, thank you for being a friend. Thank you all. And make sure that if you have other comments, you get those to me. I meant what I said, that I read those, we digest those, and we put those into the system. We do that. Okay?
Thank you very much, Kat.